Hello, welcome to the No Way Jose podcast. Today we got a unique one for you all. Just straight up cold open today. No fancy intros, no nothing. But you guys know the deal. Do all the likes, the shares, the subscribes, all that stuff. If you guys do want to make any sort of comments that you actually want us to address, you will have to super chat it for today's episode. It is live. But we have quite a cast of characters today. We have Steve Friend, Steve Baker, and Ken Silva. Me and Friend will be kind of, I guess, moderating a little bit of a debate of sorts between Ken Silva and Steve Baker. From my rough understanding, I think, so far as biases go, I think that's why me and Steve are kind of both filling in a moderator role. I think I'm a little bit more biased towards Ken. I've covered the pipe bomb story quite a bit through all of this. I mean, you guys know my perspective on it. That'll be, I think, what we're mostly focusing in on today is the pipe bomb story. So buckle up. We'll get into all of that. Like I said, though, I lean more towards, I think if, I don't know particularly if who the Blaze targeted is who actually is the J6 pipe bomber or not, but if they are, I can't imagine a better escape plan for them than what has resulted personally. So, and I think that's kind of the point of what we're here to talk about today. So that's where I'm coming from. But with that, let's go ahead and get Steve in here. Let him introduce himself. I've never had him on the show before, so I'm not going to try to introduce him for him. I had Kyle Seraphin on the show forever ago, so I know he's kind of in that same cast of characters, but I'm not going to paint him with that broad brush. So I'll bring in Steve Friend. We have two Steves here today. We'll try not to be confusing with it. Hey, what's up? Pleasure to have you on the show. First time having you on here. Figured I'd give you a chance to introduce yourself. And I guess if you feel like you have any biases or where you're coming from with this overall story, particularly, I guess I don't want to give up too much on my side of things. I could have gone a little bit longer, more of a rant. But I know wherever your biases lay in all of this, I haven't been paying attention to the minutia of where your stances are. I'm roughly of the understanding you're kind of, I guess, a little bit more amenable to where Steve is coming from here personally.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. At Real Steve Friend. You can call me Real Steve. That's, I guess, how we'll differentiate it. And I also appreciate how you said you connected me to Kyle Seraphin, but didn't want to paint me with his brush. You would be the first one because my buddy Kyle Seraphin does stuff and I get blamed for it continuously. So that's really good to have a little bit of an independent streak here. Biases go. I've known Steve Baker for basically the entire time that I've been a public-facing individual, which began in the fall of 2022. Former FBI agent, FBI whistleblower, brought some concerns about J6 to Congress, testified publicly, and then have been dealing with the fallout ever since then. As it pertains to the pipe bomb, I'm a process guy, a trained investigator, been in law enforcement for 16, 17 years. So my prime directive is and always will be follow the facts. Don't go into anything with a predetermined outcome. Weigh that, and when the facts point to one way or another, that's because the facts did, not because I wanted them to or rooted to. So I'm kind of in your camp with let's just let these two weigh in what they want to, and maybe ask some little probing questions to steel man or their positions.
Awesome. Well, let's bring Ken in here. Ken, you're no new face on this show, but we may have a new cast of viewers today. So I guess if you want to take a chance to introduce yourself and also kind of lay out where you're coming from, since this is kind of your main contention is the reason why we're here, and then we'll get Steve into it, and we'll get a rumbling.
The other Steve, yeah, sure. Steve so yeah, first of all, thanks for doing this. I'm Ken Silva, the editor of a little news site called Headline USA. Cover the news and including this pipe bomb story, and been following the developments. And basically, my contention, I guess, why we're here now is to discuss Steve Baker's bombshell November 8th expose that accused a Capitol police officer, former Capitol police officer, of being the pipe bomber. And my basic contention is the story didn't meet basic journalism standards, and because of that, he basically set up a big straw man to get knocked down, and now people can claim that the whole Fedsurrection theory has been debunked. And in the end, this story, because it wasn't done properly, is going to have done a lot more harm than good. So, I had kind of an opening statement to prepare, prepared to read, but I don't want to ramble for like 5 minutes without getting Mr. Baker a chance to come in here and introduce himself first.
Okay, well, let's get Steve Baker in here. Baker, pleasure to have you. It feels weird going by everybody's last names. I haven't done that since I was in the military, so it feels like I'm a company man all over again. But Baker, pleasure to have you on the show. If you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, I know we kind of threw a lot at you right here, and you're a little bit in the hot seat, so you may want to respond. But I guess if you just want to take a moment first off to let my audience know who you are. I guess we shouldn't assume as many people are quite in the minutia of journalism, quite like this four right here are. But Steve, let people know who you are, and then I guess if you have any sort of response before we start really getting into it, it's all you.
Well, first of all, feel free to call me Baker. I grew up my entire life. All my friends either called me Baker, and that was easy. So, and then of course, at my age, we grew up with a lot of Steves. I'm surprised, Steve Friend is one of those leftovers as the name Steve started dying out as a primary name source, and they were all replaced with Ashley or whatever. Anyway, so so there were so many Steves when I was growing up that we were all known as by our last name. So no problem there. I as far as an introduction to myself is concerned, I was independent before I went to the Blaze. I did not seek out a job there. They sought me out. Then when to put one little thing to rest, because it's the misconception out there in the Twitterverse is that technically, yes, I was terminated. I was fired. And that happened at 9:30 in the morning on a Wednesday morning 3 weeks ago, or almost 4 weeks ago. But at 6:30 the night before, they were begging me to stay. So how does that work? Well, it was because I was putting myself into a position, forcing them to terminate me. So, in the week leading up, I had decided to go rogue, and we're talking about journalistic standards. I eschew, let's just say that, a lot of those standards. I think it's time to change some of those. I'm not trying to be a poster boy for some of those changes and a poster boy for changing the way it's always been done. But the way it's always been done is changing regardless. I mean, just because of social media, because of X, because of the way media works at the speed of light now, it has changed, and it's going to continue to change. And so there are things that would I have changed related to this story in hindsight? Yeah, there are. Were there things that we have no intention of changing or have no embarrassment about? Absolutely. But the other thing to remember as we go into this is, despite Ken's contention that there was a major amount of blunders in terms of the path forward to putting this story out there, I still had to go through 4 layers of editorial review. My partner is 40 years a writer. I mean, he's written for Chicago newspapers, Wisconsin newspapers. He's 40 years as a writer in the news game. And so he's very experienced in that regard. That's Joe Hanneman. And so then we went through, as I said, 4 layers of editorial review because of the importance of this story and the magnitude and significance of this story. It went obviously through legal review at the Blaze, and then it also went through our C-suite or the executive suite. So the CEO of the company even signed off on it before publication. So there were a lot of reviews. So I did my job. I brought the facts. I brought the details. I brought the research, the investigation to the table, and then here we are today.
Awesome. Well, Ken, you said you had something prepared here. By the way, quick note, Steve, you are the moderator here, so like feel free to act as if this is your show, where you feel like it's important to sway the conversation one way or the other, and I'll be the countervailing force to whatever you bring to the table if it gets out of hand. But we have, Ken, you said you had a statement prepared, kind of like an introductory thing to kind of lay out your position. So it still seems appropriate to kind of just go right into that. So floor is yours.
Sure, yeah. So from the outset, I just like to, for the viewer's sake, get it on the table that I'm not coming from the same position as the feds. guys like former FBI agents FX Reagan or Jim Nance or Dan Bongino or the mainstream media that calls this a conspiracy theory and that says Brian Cole is definitely guilty or definitely the pipe bomber. I think all four of us have serious doubts about the Cole case. And again, I'm not necessarily decided on Shawnee's guilt or innocence. This is, again, about journalism standards, and I've been saying this since 2 days after the story was published. I guess I found a quote of what I said in a video that I sent you guys when, commenting on it. I said, let's imagine that Blaze is right, but because they didn't do this properly, they don't have proof, and now this person can sue them. And if and when it goes to discovery, they're not going to have any evidence. They'll lose the lawsuit, and the naysayers will say it's debunked. And the whole Fedsurrection theory is debunked. And, frankly, that would be a discredit to the whole country, because I do think there is something to the Fedsurrection theory. And I got to say, so far, everything that I said in that statement, in that video, is developing. It's coming to pass as we speak. So everybody's got an opinion, but you've got to judge the value of an opinion or analysis in part by its predictive value. And I'd say that, my initial analysis from 2 days after the story was published has been spot on as far as that goes. Meanwhile, Baker's supporters initially said that because Shawnee isn't suing, that's evidence of her guilt. And now these same people have pivoted and say that the lawsuit is part of a deep state attack on Baker, which I just think that's kind of like shoddy thinking, like just not taking any moment to look in the mirror. And so now I want to just kind of go over the story and remind people what's at issue here. Basically, the November 8th piece was underpinned by two major prongs of evidence. One was a gait analysis that purportedly found a 94% match from the pipe bomb suspect seen on the video January 5th to the former Capitol Police officer, Shawnee Kirchhoff. In gait analysis, again, that's just like a fancy way to say that Shawnee walks very similar to the person seen on camera. Then you have former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who says that he conducted surveillance on Shawnee's neighbor. So when you take those two prongs and put them together, again, I'll admit that that is very compelling on the surface, but it kind of falls apart under closer scrutiny, as Baker knows, because multiple corrections had to have been made to the story as kind of fanned out to the public in the early weeks. So let's start with Kyle Seraphin's claims. He's been telling this story for years about how he was on the surveillance team that was watching the, quote, suspect's resident. And he talks about how they followed somebody who used a Metro Rail Smart Trip card that belonged to a security contractor and a former Air Force official. Kyle had always represented that person as the actual suspect seen on the night of January 5th, which, again, and when you couple that with the gait analysis, that's very, very, very compelling, I will admit. But it's since come to light that the person Kyle was putting under surveillance with his FBI squad was not the person on camera allegedly placing the devices on January 5th. He was on a surveillance team that was watching somebody that was in DC the morning of January 5th. He took a picture by, I guess, apparently where the RNC pipe bomb had been placed. And this is the person that used the Metro card, went back to next door of Shawnee, but that person didn't even live there. He was just visiting from out of town. So it's still interesting that Kyle conducted surveillance on Shawnee's next door neighbor, who was a person of interest at one point, but it's far less compelling than if he were actually surveilling the person seen on video the night of January 5th. So that's taking care of kind of Kyle's prong in this story.
Can I clean up one thing there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Kyle's always said that it was a person of interest and never alleged that it was the suspect, or it was his belief it was the suspect. He's always said it was a person of interest, and the happenstance of this person being the next door neighbor to the person that was identified in Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman's story. I mean, the trillions to one odds to that, the serendipitous nature of that, I think actually bodes for to strengthen the veracity of the story.
Well, let me, before you go to the next point, Ken, I was going to just make a recommendation here for clarity and flow on what we're trying to do here. As you go down multiple points here, I'm having to take notes. I didn't come with notes, but I'm having to take notes so I don't forget what I need to address. Do we want to do like maybe Ken do one thing at a time before we go to the next thing? So for instance, we talked about the followers on X who have flipped over from saying that it was obvious that the lawsuit was not being filed because they had nothing, and then there was the flip to saying, oh well, it's clearly a deep state thing. So I would consider that one thing to be addressed, and then we get to the false church address where the surveillance team was set up, and then address that. So I just throw that out there for all of us so we can clean this up a little bit.
If you would prefer to do that, that's fine. But I guess it's just part of I'm making a larger point that there's absolutely no direct evidence in your story. But I'm fine with
real quick, Ken,
before we get in the gate.
I kind of know where you're going because I've already watched that clip, that video of yours you've put out. I've watched it a few times. So, I mean, if you guys want to pull an audible and go differently and you want to break it off, but I know you are kind of building towards a larger point. I know it feels a little bit like a Gish Gallop, but I think once we do lay out, Ken's overall point, from there we can break out individual stuff instead of getting hemmed down into details that may or may not matter as much as other things do. So at least we'll be able to see in the totality, and from there be able to pick what matters and what doesn't. Because, for example, I know you brought up some of your supporters changing their opinion on something, but that's kind of like extraneous point. Like, who gives a shit? Like, honestly, that's more just kind of like the cope that the audience is making. So this kind of gives an opportunity for us to lay out some of the substantive points, and then gives an idea for what me and Steve can hone in on, and then also you can respond to initially. So unless you really do want to break off and address the specific points, I agree with you, Ken, because I have seen your presentation on this. So I do think you are leading towards a larger point. I think it behooves us for the rest of it. I get it. It's kind of like a long monologue, but I think to make things move along smoother, it'd probably be better.
Friend, do you have an opinion?
Sure, go ahead.
Go for it. That's fine.
I'm almost finished. I just finished up the Kyle Seraphin part of the story, and now we got the gate analysis. There's been a lot of criticisms in mainstream media about how it's not a settled science. There's disputes about whether Shawnee does have a limp. It's never been used in actual trials as direct evidence, as far as I'm aware. I think that I saw that in Shawnee's lawsuit. But I'm going to stay away from that, because just the bigger point is you don't actually have the gate recognition analysis. You didn't say who did it, what software was used, whether there was a control group, what the methodology was. And it doesn't even seem like you have it. So it's just like, trust me, bro, all based on anonymous sources. And again, when you're in a lawsuit, and when they ask you where your evidence is, you don't actually have any. And so it looks like you're going to successfully be sued regardless of whether Shawnee really did it or not. And that's people are going to say it was debunked. So, and I guess lastly, I'll stay away from that for now. But, and then there's just the fact that you didn't even reach out to Shawnee for comment, which other people have mentioned, and you misrepresented her position. You said she was like on the CIA director's security detail, when in fact she's like just a campus security guard, according to the CIA.
Okay, well, all right. I know there was a lot, but I do think it was important to kind of lay out what the initial issues are. Steve, you can kind of take it away where you want, Steve Baker, and friend, if you do want to hone in on something, that's all you. But I'll leave it to you, Baker, to kind of take your pick of what you think should be responded to that, and we'll have the rest of the show to kind of go through all the different stuff here. This is what we'll be talking about probably for the whole show. So.
Right. Well, let's. I did not come prepared with a monologue, and I did watch Ken's 19-minute video that he sent out, or whoever linked to it earlier today. So I did see that. I've been trying to squeeze in a few things. I just got back from, it's my birthday, so I just got back from my birthday dinner to
Happy
jump
birthday.
on here and do this. So thank you. And so I, in terms of our story, in terms of what I know, I don't need a lot of notes. I don't need notes for what we put together. It is mostly in my head. But to start with, let me just do a lightning round answer on this, and this is not going to be a full description. I just want to go ahead and address the primary things that Ken talked about. So let's talk about the audience lawsuit flip, because actually I think it is important. I think it's a very important issue on this because of who is filing the lawsuit. Let's go back to the reason why the audience is accurately identifying this as a deep state, lawsuit and not a Shawnee Kirkhoff lawsuit, is that the law firm Clare Locke is famously known to A, not work on contingency fees, B, their retainers are famously seven figures, and then C, their published hourly rate is about $1,800 an hour. This is a very, very expensive law firm. And the reason why they don't work on contingencies and the reason why they're able to get seven-figure retainers is because they only deal with, stated by policy or by their company profile, is that they only deal with high net worth individuals and high net worth companies in terms of bringing plaintiff-based defamation lawsuits. And they're a company killer. They were the ones that they didn't kill Fox by any means, because Fox could afford it, but they got the almost $1 billion settlement there from the Dominion voting machine settlement, $750,000 anyway. And so they're very scary. They're a scary law firm, but they're not something that a government employee of any length of employment and at any pay grade can afford. And so it's very obvious, and they clearly state in the lawsuit that they're not going to reveal, at least yet, who is paying for them. It is a point of contention, and it's an obvious point for me to bring out that obviously somebody else is underwriting that. I like to joke online because I do shit post, and so I do like to joke online, and I do say, as in my last couple of posts, I've said that it's the law firm of Clare, Locke, Patel, Ratcliffe, and the Gray Lady, because of the coordinated timing of the lawsuit with the New York Times article, which came out the next morning, was very convenient, to say the least. And then in addition to that is the fact that the CIA historically has never allowed a current existing employee under their own name to either do an interview for either anything agency related or even in their personal lives. It's something they don't do. This is actually a very, very unprecedented move on their part. So it is a big part of the story. I am convinced that it's the money is coming from the taxpayer. It's probably being funneled through an NGO of some sort, some foundation, and finding its way into Clare Locke's pocket for the defense of this this particular defamation lawsuit. In terms of Kyle's claim, I'm just going to briefly mention that Kyle's claim is not a standalone claim about what he did on the days of January 12th and January 13th of 2021, 1 week after January 6th. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, and I can corroborate this, is that the FBI itself was spreading lies since our stories came out and saying to the White House, saying to Congress members, and saying to the press that Kyle Seraphin was not even on that surveillance team on the 12th and 13th. Now, we've obviously been able to counter that because a new whistleblower has come forward, an actual existing FBI employee who dropped a protected disclosure and sent it to the Congress members at the committee, and Thomas Massey, Barry Loudermilk, Jim Jordan, to let them know that Kyle, yes, indeed, was on that counter surveillance team, but also to corroborate the information and provided much more detailed information related to that. And that whistleblower has now filed 2 separate protected disclosures since his initial release. So one of the more interesting aspects of this story is that the FBI spokespeople were actually calling and saying that Kyle was not even on that team, which is a blatant lie. In terms of the gate analysis, I'm just going to leave that for now because I'm sure Ken's going to want to get into that deeper, and I'm happy to do that when we get back to that. As far as Shawnee's limp, one of the problems that a lot of people are having with Shawnee's limp is it depends on what you think and consider to be a limp, but it's a very, very interesting gait that favors the right leg. It's an absolute it's absolutely tied into a 2015 basically college career ending soccer injury where she broke her tibia in half. Now, she did recover through therapy and all the other things, and she's a very, very gifted athlete. She's a star athlete, obviously worked very hard to get her game back, then ended up playing semi-professional ball with a Columbus, Ohio team for a year before working for the Capitol Police. But where the limp began to manifest itself, or the favoring of the right leg, was during that college year, the professional year of that. Are we still on here? We lost our host. We lose our host.
That's right. I can act as the host.
Yeah, that's why we got it back.
If we're still here. Yeah. So the bottom line is that the gate is something that is not seen from the few seconds of video that the FBI released. And it's one of these things that so many analysts have realized and have analyzed, spent a lot of time on, is showing that the frame rate alteration and the aspect ratio alteration of the few seconds of video the FBI released in over 5 years seems to be deliberate because, first of all, according to the FBI and through the congressional reports that the FBI told Congress, is that the FBI has 30,000 pieces, or let me get the wording right, 30,000 video files of the January 6th bomber. 30,000 files. I would imagine out of 30,000 files, if they were really serious about a $500,000 reward, they could have released better video. Well, in fact, better video exists because myself and my team that have worked on this, we've had access to a total of 21 minutes of Capitol CCTV that we've harvested from there. And that does not include all of the video that the FBI has been able to gain from from ring cameras, from the security cameras at the hotels and the other businesses that the bomber walked past that night. And that's where they've accumulated this 30,000 files. And I'll tell you, I'll give you an interesting anecdote with regards to that. We know of one particular family where the bomber stopped in front of the house, that the family themselves had the opportunity, or it was the happenstance to get close enough to the bomber to recognize the bomber as a white person. All right. And then when the FBI was doing the door-to-door knock and talk and asking people if they could get their ring camera, this particular family said, well, we don't subscribe, so we don't have the video immediately available here from going back to however many days it was. And the FBI responded and said, that's okay, we can get it anyway. Of course, they're going to go right to the company, to Ring, to get that video. Meaning we're always under surveillance and they say everything. So we have a lot more video that is yet to be seen that we will be revealing over the course of time. And we've released a few snippets over the last few weeks since I removed the muzzle off of my, my ability to talk about this by leaving the place. So I can assure you that this unique walk, call it a limp or not, is going to become much more manifest as we release more of this video. We can come back to the software issue because that's going to be a lengthy discussion as it relates to the Gate software, and then how we acquired that and how we acquired the source that did that for us. In terms of anonymous sources in the story, look, every news organization uses multiple anonymous sources. It's a regular thing, all the way down to presenting 3 FBI anonymous sources who corroborate that they saw they saw a video of Shawnee, quote unquote, playing with her puppies. That is still anonymous sources from the FBI, quoted by CBS News. CBS did not have a copy of the video, but they felt like the 3 FBI sources were enough to go forward with that, and so that's what they did. Speaking of journalistic standards, those who say that our story has been debunked, they've done nothing to debunk it. They just say it's debunked, and it's because they don't like the way we rolled it out. Let's see, the fact that we didn't contact Shawnee. I don't know if you've ever tried to contact somebody that works for the CIA and has had all of their current information scrubbed and virtually impossible. Now, we did find her current address. She now lives with her boyfriend in his home that he owned even before January 6th. And so we did find that. And as I have said on numerous occasions, yes, I could have gone and knocked on her door, but I didn't. But when she left the Capitol Police, our sources at the Capitol Police, that's the first thing that they told us, is that, first of all, she's a very well-liked employee, very well-liked cop there. Her colleagues, coworkers, squad members, everybody that worked with her, all the way from command on down to her actual teammates, loved the hell out of her. She was a great cop, and they were really disappointed that when she left the Capitol Police about 6 months after January 6th, that she had scrubbed everything, changed her phone numbers, deleted all of her email. Changed her email addresses, and then also scrubbed her social media. And so then after that, I assume because of the assistance you get from the CIA of doing that, they went and scrubbed the data off the web. Now, we did very, very deep dives, and we did dark web, deep web scrubs, and found a lot of information, but all of the phone numbers rang and did not answer. So we did not have current phone numbers to call. We did not have current email addresses to access. And so that did not happen. And as I said, I actually wish I had went and knocked on her door. I wish I had met her. In fact, I told the New York Times reporter who did the story on her last week, or published it last week, because I've actually spent 2 full hours with the New York Times reporter on this story. I think she used 2 sentences of my full 2 hours of information I gave her. But what I told her is I was really jealous that she got the opportunity to spend that much time with Shawnee. But of course, the CIA/Claire Locke are not going to give Shawnee that much time with me. And so let's see. The next thing you mentioned, or kind of the last thing, that we misrepresented her job. Well, one of the things that we did, and this is a long story we can get into if you would like to, is why I took this to ODNI. That's well known. I'm not revealing anything new here, but we took this information and we took our evidence to ODNI rather than FBI. And to be honest with you, as I've stated before, it's because I don't trust the FBI at all. Period. I don't trust Ray's FBI. I don't trust Patel's FBI. Mainly, I don't trust the deep state core of the FBI. And that's who probably were feeding information to Cash and Bongino to begin with, and gave them erroneous information about both Shawnee Kirkhoff and Brian Cole Jr. So I took it to ODNI for those reasons, and we did receive some assistance in figuring out who she was and verifying which three-letter agency she worked for. And when the files were pulled, and again, I'm not sharing anything that's not already publicly disclosed, is that when they pulled the files from whatever that massive database is of the entire intelligence community, is that it specifically stated in there that Ms. Kirchhoff was, in fact, part of a larger protective detail. Now, it could be that she was on Ratcliffe's detail. It could be that she was on other dignitaries. It could have been that she was just a campus security. So in terms of the correction, when I got a call the next morning from the top public affairs person at the CIA, she called me at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And it was kind of funny because it was interesting that they would call me on a weekend, that they thought that it was very important that they corrected that story. She's actually has her baby who's crying in her arms, the chief public affairs officer at the CIA, at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And she says to me, and I quote, she said, "I just wanted to make sure that you got this right so that it didn't detract from the veracity of the rest of your story."
Okay.
So there we go.
So Baker kind of went down and tried to address each one of those things. Ken, I mean, I'll leave it up to you. Is there one spot you want to start honing in on, like into the particulars as opposed to broad stroke?
Yes, Steve Friend, since you were the first to purportedly correct me, I guess I'll respond to you first, actually. I pulled up the original report of Kyle Seraphin talking about conducting surveillance, which was published by the Washington Times reporter Carrie Pickett. Says, and this is a story that Kyle shared, never had any issues with. Says, former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who worked on the pipe bomb investigation, told the Times that agents had linked a Metro Rail smart trip card used by the bomber to when he placed the bombs and then to travel through the Washington Metro system to a stop in Northern Virginia. He's got a quote talking about this. Suspect was caught on surveillance video. He wore a sweatshirt, hoodie, Nikes, backpack, gloves. He was recorded walking through Capitol Hill neighborhoods, carrying what federal investigators believe were 2 live pipe bombs. However, Seraphin said technicians determined the pipe bombs were inoperable. His story runs counter to the FBI's narrative. And then lastly, Mr. Seraphin also explained that another individual bought the Metro Rail smart trip card 1 year before the pipe bomber suspect used it on January 5th, 2021. So maybe you've had private conversations with Kyle, but I've heard him say this story multiple times, including on Jose's show, and he's always represented that he indeed conducted surveillance on the actual person seen walking around planting the devices, and that's just not the case that we now know.
How does that weaken the story that Baker put out?
Because he actually conducted surveillance on somebody totally different. It was somebody who was there that morning. It wasn't the person who planted devices. Okay,
but as the story is now, if we're accepting what Baker's reported, that a team of FBI agents doing surveillance was at a residence that was next door to the person that Baker's identified, and it's now come to pass that there's actually 3 persons of interest, but the vicinity, I think, holds quite well for the strength that this is a person who was involved.
Sure, that's fine. I'm just correcting the record, since you were trying to correct me.
Let's go back to that, because the debate here is how we represented the story. By the time we wrote the story, we knew exactly what had happened. We knew exactly who was at each address. We knew that the resident to the left. Now, by the way, these are 2 Falls Church, Virginia condos, and they are next door neighbors, separated by a firewall. Literally, the 2 front doors are 6 feet apart from one another. We know, because of the deep dive we did into all of the characters represented in this story, that the resident of we'll call it the door number 1 to the left, was person of interest number 3. Now,
Steve, hold on. This is just not true. I've got a copy of your story up, the original story. You had to correct this. It says this is your November 8th original story. The FBI tied a DC Metro Rail Smart Trip card allegedly used by the pipe bomb suspect to an Air Force civilian employee, but determined that while the man purchased the card, he did not use it. The suspect allegedly used the card to travel from DC to a stop in Falls Church after planting the bombs.
After planting the bomb? No, we knew by the time we published this story that was the allegation.
It
wasn't the allegation that we made. Yeah, this wasn't the allegation that we made.
The alleged is in the story is Baker and Hanneman saying that was what the working theory was, that the FBI was going on.
Correct. Because on POI 3, who was the resident of that, was the person who owned the Metro card, whose credit card was attached to the purchase of that Metro card. And this particular person at his address had a guest on the 5th and the 6th that used that card. And that is person of interest number 2. That's the person that wandered around that you mentioned earlier in the DC neighborhoods, the person that went into the alleyway behind the RNC and took photographs, literally a photograph of the exact trash container next to which the bomb was planted. Why do I know that? I have that photograph that he took. I've spent 5 hours with that individual face-to-face interviewing him. I've spoken to person of interest number 3, the actual resident of that address, but he slammed the door in my face.
So the FBI's narrative is that the person who used the Smart Trip card was the one in the morning of January 5th taking pictures, which is
That's exactly what I just said. That's exactly what I just said.
But you reported in your story, quote, the suspect allegedly used the card to travel from DC to a stop in Falls Church after planting the bombs. And then
allegedly was the original thought.
That
was allegedly the original thought. Why would I say that in the story and then clearly say that was the person living behind door number 2 was the one that we believed actually traversed around the RNC and DNC that night and planted the 2 devices? That would be, I think you're just misinterpreting who the alleged who claimed the alleged bomber was. For a very, very, very long time, it was assumed in the Twitterverse is that person of interest number 3, who owned the Metro card, had supplied the card to the bomber. We know that is not the case, and the FBI knew that was not the case at least 6 days after Kyle's team was pulled, because they didn't even interview them till the 19th, which is what makes this story particularly peculiar, and it's one of the reasons why the new whistleblower, the existing current FBI special agent, filed a whistleblower report, filed a protected disclosure, is because of how outside of standard operating procedure it was to have the single most important event of January 6th, actual weapons of mass destruction, as the FBI has referred to them, were planted particularly at the DNC, where the then Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Harris, was inside that building. And then to have that surveillance team yanked off of the property or the site after only 2 days, and then did not even interview them and clear POI 2 and 3 until the 19th. The FBI did not know that they were not the ones that planned, schemed, and that POI 2 was not the person that planted that bomb until 6 days later. But they pulled the team. And here's the problem. In that protected disclosure, first page, written by the attorney himself representing the whistleblower, he revealed that there were photographs taken of somebody there, door number 2, who looked and dressed similarly to the hooded figure that traversed the Capitol on the evening of the 5th. That's in the disclosure. Now, what we discovered, and this was, look, When I interviewed Thomas Massey back in November for the Matt Kibbe show, Thomas revealed something, an interesting anecdote about his life when he was at MIT. He said in his mathematics department, he had the opportunity to either study and specialize in statistics or probabilities. He chose probabilities because it's infinitely more interesting. And so let's go back. We have door number 1. We have door number 2. They're 6 feet apart. The two domiciles are separated by a single firewall. And what we discovered is that the officer with the unique gate, the gate that matches software by 94% by intelligence officers who specialize in what they call targeting analysis, said that it was a 98% match, lived next door to POI 2 and 3. Now, Ken, there's 2.4 million individual separate households in the greater DC area. 2.4 million. And somehow, person of interest 2, person of interest 3 are next door to who I believe, and I'm making news with you right now, I believe that Shadi Kirkhoff is person of interest number 1 because the FBI in their own documentation, in their own bomb report, which came out coincidentally also on January 13th, referred to the hooded bomber as unsub. You know what that is, friend?
Unidentified subject.
Correct. They referred to the bomber as unsub, not POI 1. I believe now I'm conjecturing with you right now, but I'm conjecturing based on a lot of stuff I know that is yet to be revealed. I believe that Shani was person of interest number 1, and her phone number was one of those 51 phone numbers identified by the FBI as being law enforcement, and they decided not to investigate them. And I believe that the reason why that counter surveillance team was yanked off the property as soon as whoever, I don't know who realized it. I don't know if it was a realization of Capitol Police Command, their intel division. I don't know if it was CIA. I don't know if it was FBI. I don't care. But somebody had a holy fuck moment and said, get them out of there now. Because everything, and Friend can address this, how outside of protocol that would have been to yank the counter surveillance team off of your primary bomb suspects before you've even interviewed them.
Yeah, it would be extremely atypical, particularly because it's such a high priority case at that point.
And yet now they're fine with, subjecting her to 6 hours of interrogation, a polygraph, after they said this is so hot that we can't even touch her. That doesn't make much sense to me.
So the polygraph, which she's subject to at any point, being somebody who works for the CIA, you have to cooperate with that. She comes to their attention because of Baker's reporting. So I'm confused. Well, why are you saying that she was subject to something hot and heavy at that point, when I think Steve kind of lays it out that this is the going hypothesis that he and Joe Hanneman have. They have laid out how the facts and circumstances with the gate analysis, the infinitesimal odds that you would have a surveillance team on a next door neighbor within a general DMV area after this. And then that all coincides with a holy shit moment where they have to, as the former co-deputy director of the FBI, Daniel Bongino, for 292 days, said, go through everything in order to clear her, which is not appropriate at all. It's just not in the interest of law enforcement to try to clear somebody or try to make them appear guilty. You just gather the facts. So they had her submit to a polygraph, which she registered deception on, and then went back to work for the CIA, which is also impossible. It's on par with the CIA allowing you to talk to the New York Times, having failed a polygraph, to go back to work.
Well, she registered stress in her voice, which I probably would too if I had a helicopter.
Now, have you ever had a polygraph, Ken?
No, thankfully.
Okay, so in a polygraph, that is actually, they want you to register stress, and they explain this out to you. It's not, it's yes or no questions. They want you to have stress so that they can get the baseline there. They will do a practice round where they will have you specifically tell a lie, and they'll build up to the lie so they know that you're getting stressed building up to that lie so they can get that baseline. That is actually in the interest of a polygraph. And look, I know, the polygraphs, people say they're not admissible in court. Well, they're becoming admissible in court. And some people say that they're junk science, but it's still the way that the system works right now. You have to have a polygraph in order to carry a security clearance. She registered deception, not stress. Now you could, argue over the terminology and then deception and stress. It's potatoes. But the polygrapher who administered the test said that she was asked, did you plant the pipe bomb, and register deception on that one? And did you plant the pipe bomb on January 5th and register deception on that?
And then the polygrapher actually admonished her for delivering prepared and rehearsed answers.
So now we're back to, we're trusting the FBI now. Okay, after everything's a fake and a cover up, but hey, this is legit because it supports our claim. That's pretty interesting.
I certainly wouldn't trust the FBI because she went back to work.
Well, you're citing their evidence as God's truth.
We're citing a polygrapher. Yes, we are citing a specific piece of evidence that they finally have released to us. What we don't know is what they did with her 5 years prior to that. And as I believe that I have the evidence to support this, and I believe that this will ultimately come out in discovery. It will come out in when we are able to put these individuals under oath, because we know the names of all the characters involved. But I believe we're going to find out that the Fedsurrection, which you seem, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, believe that there was some element of a Fedsurrection involved with January 6th, as do I. But one of the things we're going to find out is who the players were that manufactured a training exercise on the evening of the 5th and then into the 6th related to these pipe bombs, which the training exercise itself was a ruse to create a diversion to deplete already minimal Capitol Police
Again,
force.
This is all just you speculating, right? You don't have any.
Oh, no, it's not. It's because, have you watched the video of how the Secret Service responded that day at 1:05 p.m. to a Capitol Police counter surveillance officer, plainclothes, who walked up to both of the SUVs where the Secret Service were sitting, blocking the entrance to the underground parking garage at the DNC. And when the Capitol Police plainclothes counter surveillance officers walked up to them and told them that there was a bomb 10 feet from their vehicle, they sat there for 2.5 minutes and finished their sandwich.
Okay.
Then when they got out, they then violated every single aspect of their training and protocol related to suspicious devices. And they didn't cordon off the area. They allowed families to continue walking right past the bomb. They didn't block the street traffic. Traffic was still going. 40 feet away, it's a train trestle. They didn't call the metro and stop the train traffic because all of that was within the perimeter of what had to be closed for that very type of device, had it been a real bomb. They did none of that. That's because the officer walked up to them and said, hey guys, look, we're getting ready to go through the dog and pony show.
You don't know that. You're just saying this. This is not.
Yeah. To back up Ken's point, he said you're real quick. To back up Ken's point, he said you're speculating, and from there you then pointed out a data point and then applied your own interpretation of it. Like, that's kind of exactly what Ken's saying. Point,
but those two counter surveillance officers have been interviewed by congressional investigators.
That's super fucky. To be very clear, that's super fucky. But also, what do you make of that? There's a ton of super fucky thing in all of this. So how do we connect these things? The thing is to find reliable information from which we can build upon.
There's only two explanations. There's only two explanations for why the United States Secret Service agents responded to the notification that a bomb was sitting 10 feet from them, they were either in on the conspiracy or they were told something that made them go, oh, okay, yeah, we can wait. And that's exactly what happened.
It's fair to say that Baker is speculating on that point, but I think that the facts that are in evidence are that there was a response to a discovered package, and on video, the law enforcement personnel there, the Secret Service, the Capitol Police, did not conduct themselves in a way that you would in keeping with your policy when you find a suspicious package. That's
we're talking about the same agency that almost got Trump killed multiple times, the parties with Colombian prostitutes, drinks all night. You could list off 20 incidents.
But what I'm talking about is on video, they didn't follow the protocols. Is that true or not?
Which is like a tale as old as time with the Secret Service at this point. But yeah, go on.
What they had no fear for their own lives. Hey, and by the way, the Capitol Police officer.
Do you accept the FBI's evidence that they were messing around with prostitutes because the FBI investigated? I mean, we're just going to go around and around and around.
Yeah, the fraud admitted it. Dan Bongino's brother was involved, and Dan admits it. It's not up for dispute.
Neither is the video evidence of Secret Service agents not addressing a discovered suspicious package as they're supposed to.
I don't think anyone is disputing that. It's just what do we do with that? Yeah.
Well, again, it's the totality of the video evidence points to the fact that look, there were 4 Secret Service employees sitting there. You had 2 Capitol Police officers. You had additional Capitol Police officers in the area. No one, upon initial arrival, behaved themselves in the manner you would expect for somebody who just discovered the existence of a potential explosive device within 5 steps from them. Nobody behaved correctly. You would think one person would have went, hey guys, standard operation procedure is we got to stop traffic. We got to do this. They did none of that. And then the 2 Capitol Police counter surveillance officers, not only did they not behave properly either, they stopped looking for devices. They found what they were looking for. They knew exactly where it was. They found, and of course, we've presented all the video evidence of that story in and of itself. And we also know from congressional sources that those 2 officers have been interviewed, and we have been told by those who did, the actual investigators, also former retired intel officers themselves, said that the responses that those 2 counter surveillance officers gave them were the most rehearsed and bullshit answers they had ever received in all their years of doing interviews. And of course, the Capitol Police did not allow those 2 officers to be interviewed under a transcripted interview under oath.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. Ken, is there something you really want to hone in on there? Because I was going to redirect otherwise. Is there something specific here? Because it does kind of feel like we were just spinning our wheels around this. But there's something you want to hone in on here, Ken?
Go for it.
Okay, well, I don't think you're going to catch any of us. It seems like we're kind of in circles here because you're pointing out all this crazy shit, and you're like, whoa, this is wild, and no one's here disagreeing. I think me and Ken definitely think this is probably Fed-related, and I'd guess me and Ken wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Shawnee was in some way related to this occurrence. I would not be the tiniest bit surprised. If anything, I'd kind of somewhat lean towards it, but that's kind of all the more importance to get it right. And I think I'm just a retard, but like everything I'm hearing kind of sounds like somewhat ambiguous stuff. The most solid thing I've heard, and forgive me, my internet did go out. Forgive me if you guys did hone in on this later, but probably the most specific thing really in there of any that really in all of this has been the gate analysis to me. And that, to be honest, even that is one of those ones that I think upon further scrutiny, I go, what the fuck am I even looking at here? Once again, I'm just a retard. I hear 94% and like, yeah, a lot of people, it's funny you mentioned probability and, Thomas Massey earlier. It's kind of like, it's a joke. You can lie with the probability statistics, whatever. It's like, what does 94% mean? If you put me and a monkey up next to each other, what is their percent? I don't even know. But also like, this is a gate analysis handed off to you by some fucking Fed somewhere. Which, I mean, the fact that it came from a Fed does not necessarily inherently like invalidate it, but I'd kind of want to see the work. I need a little bit more information. Gate analysis seems kind of rough. I guess just kind of, can we get into the specifics of what is even going on with the gate analysis? Because I mean, all this other stuff is we're talking about this person, that person, and a lot of this is kind of hemmed up on somewhat trust me bros along the FBI, which, to be fair, I mean, I guess, Steve, I know you're kind of answering a lot for a lot of Kyle, so I guess maybe I'm assuming here, I don't think you had anything to do with the investigation on this, right? That's more Kyle, right? Okay, cool, just be clear. So, anyways, the gate analysis, I'm just kind of honing in on that. What is the specifics on this? I know my vague understanding is this was it was given by an analyst, so I guess technically it's a civilian employee, but it's a fucking agent of the federal government, so that's a Fed to me. So yeah, what is this? What is this gate analysis? Like this 94%, are you able to frame how significant this is? And then also, what are the specifics on this? How could this be validated, going forward? Can it be validated?
And how it will be itself in a lawsuit if you don't even have it.
Well, it will be validated if we go to court. I still don't think we'll ever make it to court on this, and for reasons we can talk about later. And it would be speculation, of course, for me to even give you those reasons why I don't think that this is ever going to make it to a trial. But the bottom line is that gate analysis itself has been horribly mischaracterized by not only the lawsuit itself, the law firm Clairlock calls it and has called it junk science. Well, it's not junk science, and it has been used in innumerable court cases around the world in Western first world countries, including the United States going back to the 1830s. Gate analysis is not junk science. As a matter of fact, the intelligence community and the DOW use gate analysis every single day. In fact, this is fact, an actual J6 bomber suspect was cleared by the FBI using gate analysis. They found the receipts of one particular gym owner in Virginia who owned one of those exact pair of shoes, the Nike Air Max Speed Turf 2018 model shoes in the exact same black, gold, and white color that the bomber was wearing that night on the 5th. And this guy became one of their prime suspects. And as a matter of fact, he had an unusual gait, and they used gait analysis to completely clear him. They used gait analysis in the new Nancy Guthrie investigation for this, Savannah Guthrie's mother who disappears, apparently kidnapped. They used gait analysis to try and identify him. As a matter of fact, most analysts in that space believe that gait analysis is infinitely more accurate than is face recognition technology. And one of the great things about gait analysis is you don't have to have anything up close anyway. You can do this from hundreds of meters away, and you can do it from 20,000 feet in the air with a drone camera. And then a professional analyst can look at the gait of the person that he or she has been studying for weeks, months at a time and go, yes, that's the guy. And then call in an airstrike on them. We kill people with regularity using gait analysis. Law enforcement.
A lot of civilians.
A
lot of civilians.
Yeah. And a lot of bombers, terrorists, etc. But one of the things that has been done, again, for hundreds of years is that professionals, when they look at footprints, for instance, they're not just looking at the soles on the shoes to match up. This isn't Columbo matching the soles of the shoes. They're looking for how the feet dig into one side of the ground or the soft turf. They're looking for how the foot crosses over the other. So if they have a path of those feet walking, they can see whether that right foot crosses over. Maybe they're pigeon-toed, maybe they're duck-footed, but they can recognize and establish a pattern, which then allows them to narrow in on somebody. So gait analysis is not junk science. Maybe friend wants to, from a FBI and an investigative standpoint, can talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the last point you made there about they put the cast down onto footprints, and that is not just to figure out what the sole of the foot looks like, the size of the foot. It would imply the weight distribution that a person has, which is going to be connected to the way that they move through time and space, which is another way of saying their gait.
Real quick, before we move on, Baker, I'm maybe I missed it, but did you ever directly respond to? I'm curious. Do you guys have a copy of this? Is this something you can even refer to in any way, shape, or form? I'm just curious for my own purposes. I just don't recall if you could address. I know Ken's mentioned a couple times.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've told and what I've stated in other interviews. As you can imagine, I've done a lot of interviews on this topic and been asked this question a lot. In fact, we went through a much more grinding interview with Megyn Kelly on this topic, which of course she spiked the story and did not release a almost two hour interview that I gave to her. But the answer to that question is simply this. The person who ran this for us did this with great risk to their career. I will never reveal until that person is ready to come forward who it is. I will never reveal what we've seen, because what we've seen narrows down basically to the point of most assuredly identifying who the person is. It is a very, very high-end software used by the intelligence community, and it was not a current employee of the intelligence community who ran this for us. And this particular individual, as I said, did this with great risk to themselves and with no agenda whatsoever. And when I got the call after the analysis was done, it was a breathless reaction. You're not going to believe this. Now, if you guys want to know, we can talk about how we got to that point of me taking this somewhere and having it run. But, I think as anybody else in investigative journalism has, you develop and you build sources in the community and in the area where maybe you have a specialty or you have a particular affinity for the type of work that government sources, who they are and what they do and that sort of thing. And I happen to have a very large bevy of sources from the intelligence community and from the DOD or DOW now. And it is through those sources that I was able to find the person to do this for us. And again, it was not a person with an agenda whatsoever. And so when we get down to, as I said, if we go to trial, I think we'll have plenty to show. That's all I can say and will say right now.
Okay, but I mean, for current purposes, I'm not really trying to sound like an asshole, but we've kind of honed down. This is probably the biggest thing, and this sounds to me like a trust me bro from a Fed.
Yeah, it's trust me bro. I have video of Shawnee Kirkhoff on the evening of the 5th playing with her puppies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean,
trust me bro is standard operating procedure from the press.
I mean, okay, but that's kind of what we're here about a little bit. I mean, and we've kind of, I think I've noticed, at least myself, a tendency to kind of fill in the blanks in ways that we want them to be filled in, it seems. Which, I mean, anyone could do this. I mean, don't get me wrong, me and Ken started from the jump saying we're not big fans of the Feds. If anything, I actually kind of lean towards your conclusion. My issue is the means by which we ended up here. And I just don't think this is beyond reproach by any shape or form. I mean, I'm really not trying to put my... You have a trust me bro from a Fed. You have some, and once again, I'm a retard, so maybe you get the specifics. You're like, don't get me wrong. I think Brian Cole is probably a patsy. I wouldn't be surprised if Shawnee does it, but it's all the more why we need to get there in a legit way. And just all I'm seeing is a trust me bro from some sort of Fed of some flavor and some persons of interest that are nearby. And the Secret Service did some wild shit, and don't get me wrong, I think the Feds are in on it anyway. So it's kind of... I feel like we're filling a lot of blanks here, but go ahead.
Can I ask you a question here, Jose and Ken? Let me just take it to the most extreme. Let's say that tomorrow, Shawnee Kirkhoff calls a press conference and says, I admit that I was the January 5th pipe bomber. Would you accept that as a confession, and that was, or would you still be suspicious?
I'd have my suspicions, I guess, but I generally would think that's probably the... I'd have to process it. That would be a weird move. But generally, I'd probably lean towards it.
So I mean, but and that's the most extreme, the most, the most prejudicial thing that she could do to sway it would be, yes, it was me. And you'd still have suspicion. So is there any argument that Steve could have made in any of his articles about this that would have brought you over to believe that she is in fact the pipe bomber?
Probably if they don't produce the actual alibi of her playing with her puppy. It seems like they're really postured like they have it, though. They disclosed that in the lawsuit with the screenshot. Brian Cole's lawyers are trying to subpoena it. So, I'd be suspicious if they don't produce that. But I got to say, it's an insane strategy to say, we're going to publish this explosive story. We don't have the evidence, but if it goes all the way to a defamation lawsuit and we go all the way to trial, that's when we're going to show the evidence. That's absolutely bonkers.
Steve Baker's going to have to back me up on this, but I think that you're protecting a source for when it comes to the gate analysis, which is correct, in keeping with good journalist ethics.
Well, no, but your story isn't publishable if you don't have any evidence. So Baker said earlier that anonymous sources are used. It's a well-practiced thing, but you got to look at how they're used. If it's a case where you're alleging something that could lead to a defamation lawsuit, you don't hinge the entire thing on an anonymous source that you can't reveal. This is so obvious. And you know what? Obviously I'm right because the story was retracted. Everybody's backpedaling. The lawsuit's moving through the courts. And even Megyn Kelly's lawyers agree with me. They said, when they spiked the interview, it's after extensive independent legal review without having access to certain sources referenced throughout the interview. We are not able to air this.
And also having had relationship with Kash Patel where he gave her the Covenant Christian Manifesto and having waited the exact amount of time to try to move it out of the news cycle.
And who she called during that interview, Dan Bongino, her friend.
Hey, if you want to ascribe bad motives to her, I'm not going to argue. I'm not a huge Megyn Kelly super fan, but it seems to me far more reasonable to assume that she doesn't want any piece of this because you don't have it. You don't have anything. You have nothing.
Yeah, we do. First of all, we don't have one intelligence source. We have multiple intelligence sources who have reviewed our trial. All I'm going to tell you right now is that when we get there, we'll be fine.
Okay, because I can tell you that the source that purportedly ran this gated recognition analysis, he probably broke the law. There's something called the computer misuse and cyber.
No, actually, he didn't. That's what the press misrepresented. They lied about it, and it was because the FBI lied to them. So let's just say the press. So when this story ran out, and they said, "I have been accused," and the ODNI group, called the Directors Initiative Group. That was Tulsi's special group researching and looking at special weaponization. The reason why I took that to them is because one of their tasks was the investigation of January 6th related issues and whether our intelligence, as Odie and I, that's their job. Their mandate is they're the watcher of the watchers. I mean, a very simplification, a way of saying who they are. And so I took that to them because we believed that there was a possible multi-agency conspiracy related to the pipe bomb. And as a result of that, I took this to the watcher of the watchers. Then when the press got a hold of this and they got that leaked memo, which, by the way, nobody's ever seen the memo, but they've talked about the memo, but nobody's seen it because what they got was they got sources from CIA and FBI talking about the memo. And when that was put out there, Odie and I, specifically, Joe Kent, was accused in the press of not only, they accused him of giving me the name Shawnee Kirkhoff, which is completely untrue. They also accused him of giving me illegal access to government software. Then, when the whole Joe Kent leak thing started happening, go back and look at it. Go back at the exact wording from John Solomon's revelation. They talked about the leaks of government technology. Well, they were referring specifically to that. Then I get a call from a Daily Wire reporter 4 weeks ago tonight, who called me on a Monday night, 9:30 at night, and said, "Hey, I'm trying to get a comment from you because I have," and here we go again. He says, "I have 3 independent IC sources who tell me that you were the recipient of leaked documents and technologies from Joe Kent."
Okay, this really doesn't have anything to do with my let me state my point and I'll let you finish yours.
Okay.
My point is this government contractor who ran the analysis for you most likely broke the law. There's something called the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act. It says that if you use a computer, it has to be for the specific reasons that the computer's intended for in the context of his job. You can't run an analysis on behalf of a civilian.
It wasn't a government computer.
That's not.
It wasn't a government computer, and it was not a government-owned piece of software.
It's a Fed contractor. I mean, so that's the thing. This is your buddy Kyle Seraphin kind of let the bag split. Like, you might be willing to go to jail to protect your source, but it seems like Kyle Seraphin knows the identity, and we'll see if the same said for him. This is from Alex Jones. Kyle's on.
Ken, do you just want to talk to Kyle?
Alex Jones says they gave one of the investigators.
I feel like I'm a stand-in for him again. Do you just want to talk to Kyle about this?
They gave one of the investigators access to one of the NSA subsidiaries to run the gate biometric scan, and now they want to fire those people. So it's not like they just said, "Oh, it looks like the same walk." They used U.S. government AI systems. And then Kyle says, "Yeah, well, actually, it's outside of U.S. government systems, but yes, high-level next-generation gate analysis stuff." And Alex is like, "Yeah, well, when I say the government, the contractors are the government." Kyle says, "Yeah, exactly, that's right." So then he tries to move on because he knows he really fucked up there. You guys kind of like really compromised your source, it seems like. And my point is stated: these government contractors have rules about how their computers are used.
Well, all I can tell you is that Kyle has no idea who the source is. Not the first clue. I'll tell you that right now. And you are correct. I will go to prison before I reveal my sources on this story. They will come out when they are ready to come out. And some of them have said if it comes down to it, to keep me out of prison, they will. That's all I'll tell you right now.
Okay. Well, I'll say when that happens, I'll feel a whole lot more legit about this. I mean, I do think it's kind of fair that I shouldn't take a bunch of trust me bros from intelligence communities, and I get it. It's pretty common for reporters to use sourcing, but even then, I try to be a perceptive reader and, hone in, hey, what are these people saying? And from there I go, oh, well, this is an anonymous source. I joke on my show all the time, call this is a trust me bro. And that's fine, but you filter that for what it is. And I'm sorry, but it seems like a whole lot of trust me bros to she did it, and there's a big gap between there and there. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
That's the one thing that I've never said. In fact, Megyn Kelly asked me specifically. She said, first of all, how absolutely are you assured? She said, what's the percentage of likelihood, is the way she had, that Brian Cole is not the bomber? And I said 1,000%. And she's like, well, how can you be so sure? And I said, because I've spent thousands of hours with the video. I said, the January 6th hooded pipe bomber, I can recognize on the street as well as I can recognize my 2 children walking on the street. I've spent that much hour looking at every single pixel of those videos. That's how ultimately the other person leapt to my mind with a possibility, as I saw such a similar gait with my own eyes, not being a professional. So I took it to the professionals. And then she asked me, she said, well, how sure are you that Shawnee Kirkhoff is the bomber? And I said 94 to 98%. Because that's all I got. I don't have a beef to grind here. I don't have any malice towards Shawnee Kirkhoff. I have none whatsoever. All I have is the threads that I pulled that led me to make that connection with my own eyeballs. And not being a professional in that space, I took it to multiple professionals in that space, and they, as professionals, said that their analysis is that it was a closer and better match than even the software judged it to be. That's all I reported.
All right, I do have one more question. I feel like I already asked this, but I guess maybe I do genuinely want to know this. I am curious because I am but a humble retard, and I have Steve here. Maybe once again, you're both Steve, but I have a friend here, and I feel like he might know a little bit more than I would, but I'm just kind of assuming because he's FBI. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know everything about the Air Force, despite the fact I was in it. So I don't know specifically where you were working in the FBI. But I think maybe one of you guys, and especially maybe you, Baker, since you've kind of dug into this. I kind of asked earlier with the gate analysis, what is the frame of reference? What does 94% even mean? Because, what did they say? You're 93% similar to a banana? Even amongst humans, even we're grading amongst humans, rocking 94% similar to another human. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of that's a wide gap, actually, 6% between humans and how they walk. I guess it really is all about how you're quantifying this number.
Yeah, the methodology is a real issue because, with facial recognition, they feed your face into software, and then the software has data that was scraped, billions and billions of photos scraped off the internet, and then the algorithm does its thing and finds a possible match. But gait recognition software isn't as developed because they don't have billions and billions of videos of everybody walking that they could just scrape off Facebook and whatnot. So what is it? You took video of Shawnee walking and video of the suspect, which by the way was enhanced by AI, in other words, doctored, and then compared those two with the software?
No, I didn't take a video that was enhanced by software or AI or altered. We took original video. You missed that point I made earlier. We have a ton more video. I've spent, I have spent more time in the Capitol CCTV viewing room than any other journalist on the planet. The hooded bomber?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I have spent more time in
footage that you haven't released.
That's correct.
But then
I talk about this in every video. I talk about this in every interview that I do. We have infinitely. So the FBI has released this much video. We have this much video unaltered, and then the FBI has, as far as the eye can see, in every direction more video, and yet they've never released it either. And if they really gave a shit and really were interested in giving out that $500,000 as a reward, they would have released better, clearer video. Not only the additional 20 minutes that I have, they would have released a lot more of the 30,000 files of video they have. Now, why didn't they release it? And why did they only release frame altered, frame reduced selections where it looks like claymation stop action person walking down the streets and down the sidewalks and in the alleyway? You tell me why they released such shitty video instead of the good stuff that they have and that I have.
But just to go rehash this again, Baker, you took original video unaltered and took that to an expert in gate analysis who uses the software and then a trained eyeball test, for lack of a better term.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
we didn't use the FBI video they released because that's shit video.
All right, so to back up, all right, so we have a trust me bro from some Fed that we may or may not ever learn about, and it sounds to me, I mean, I guess I can pass it off to you, not to be a dick, but sounds to me like neither of you can really, I guess it's not really on you, friend, but I guess more Baker can provide a layman's framing of what 94 to 98% even means. Like, how can we even? Because 6% difference in walking between one human or another. Okay, then I'm genuinely curious.
Because it's not walking. It's the entire body. It's how the arms.
Well, I understand what a gait is. I mean, how can you? Yes, I get that, but yeah.
So ultimately, what happens? So let's go back to what Ken was talking about with facial recognition. You can take a photograph from a January 6th person that was, striking an officer on the West Terrace on January 6th with a piece of fence, broken fence. And you could take that face because maybe the COVID mask fell down, so you have the face, and then they can run it through facial recognition software, and then the software will bring up some close matches and then maybe even give you an exact match. That's actually how they found individuals, was using that technology. But you can do the same thing, but Ken's absolutely correct. There's not the established database, but what you can do is you can take the exact footage, of which we have 2.5 hours of Miss Kirchhoff walking as a Capitol Police officer on both the 5th and the 6th. And we have footage of her walking as a soccer player post-injury. We could take that video, put it into the computer, the software, next to the video, the unaltered video of the person who distributed the two devices on the evening of the 5th, and then the software will then go, this is the closeness of the match that it is. You have a 94% likelihood that it's the same person. That's what the software spits out. Then we had actual targeting analysts with the Department of Defense and from the intelligence community. And I'll quote one of them because we've used it in the story. One of the targeting analysts told us that, and by the way, retired Lieutenant Colonel, Army, senior targeting analyst, said, and I quote, "I have called airstrikes in on individuals for less evidence than you have. You have it right."
Well, I mean, they just killed almost 200 little boys and girls in Manab not too long ago, the Manab school in Iran. So I don't really know. I mean, you've brought that up multiple times. I've tried not to be a glib asshole.
Yeah, I think you might.
I will mention it now.
I'm telling you that those children were not the target, as you know. But
well, they sure fucking died.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with this story. It has nothing to do with gait analysis, as far as I know. If there was gait analysis used in that attack, I don't know what it was and who the individual that they were targeting was. and the sad tragedy of 200, but that has nothing to do. Look,
well,
I'm not going to speak to Steve Friend's politics, but I understand, Ken, you're a libertarian. I'm a libertarian.
Let's just say gate analysis hasn't been audited as far as that goes, because I mean, they used to tout, metadata. We have sophisticated NSA technology where we could see, who's talking on what phones and kill terrorists that way. And then the Intercept broke it it's been 15 years ago now, that 8 out of 10 people they kill is the wrong guy. So I'm not going to, I don't think it's really a point in your favor to say, oh, the Pentagon's touting this is how they do drone strikes. I wouldn't accept that as a valid point.
Yeah, which you did say you said that was it's not relevant. You've brought up twice now for different examples of how there were remarks from certain government officials that we've used less evidence to murder people, essentially, and that's what I was pointing out. That's that doesn't. I tried not to mention before, but it's hard not to. I'm a little bit of an anti-war voice myself, and paying attention to the minutiae of all that, it's kind of so yeah, I don't put a ton of stock in that, to be honest. I see some people say, what does that have to do with anything? Obviously, I'm not saying they use gate analysis to determine. It actually looked like they probably had an old targeting package, and they just didn't even bother to use Google to verify their targets, because everywhere it was labeled that was a kid's school. So I guess in the past, though, it used to be attached to an IRGC base of some sort. So anyways, but point being is, pointing to the Pentagon as having some sort of, hey, we do this or that. This is kind of my point. I'm trying to get at, I guess it sounds like you're saying, I guess the little snapshot I cut out there for my question, though, is that what the percentage is comparing old footage. So 94% likelihood compared to some old video of herself. So it's not like a match up against other people or.
No. We're talking about
I just want
footage,
because I thought that's what I heard.
No, you said old footage of herself. We have footage of Miss Kirchhoff walking around the Capitol doing her job as a Capitol police officer on January 5th and January 6th. And
sorry
we have
if you got come up
the bomber on January 5th.
Sorry if you got caught up on my wording of oldage. I wasn't trying to catch you in like a trap there. I was just trying to get clear. What you're saying is that the gate analysis is based off of comparing different videos of herself to the suspect, essentially. So that one versus that, and then saying 94. So it's not compared to others, but even then, I still just got to say that, 6% could be a chasm. That could be, basically a damn near ringer for, 94% doesn't. That's still 6%. And I said 98 was one you're giving. Yeah.
And that's what I've always said. I've said my doubt is 2 to 6%. And look, I'm just reporting. I don't have any malice towards Shawnee Kirchhoff. I'm just reporting what the data said. That's it. And what the professionals say. That's it.
Well, the data doesn't say it's a 94% certainty that she's the pipe bomber. That's what you say. But it says a 94% chance that the gates match up or whatever. And you got to keep in mind.
It's a 94% chance that it's the same person.
The person dropping pipe bombs. So yes, that's what it would say.
And you got to keep in mind that Shawnee's fully kitted out with 50 pounds of gear when she's walking through the Capitol compared to somebody in a sweatshirt and jeans. So
not on the 5th, she's not kitted out.
Not 94% chance that they walk identically. They could walk identically and it still be a different person. This is, again, untested science.
It's absolutely not true. The people that do and develop gate recognition software, if you go study it, they say absolutely that is not the case. And as a matter of fact, the professionals told me, and this is an anecdotal quote. The professionals told me that you cannot fake or outsmart the software by walking through the desert in Dune, to keep from attracting the worms. You got to alter your gait. They said, no, you cannot fake the software. And the professional said to me, he said, now I can, but you can't. Can't do it.
Well, these are the people in the business of selling their product. And you know, you could put like
those are people in the business of using the product.
You could put a rock in your shoe, and that would alter your gait. So there are.
I think where we're at here is Baker's presenting the facts that he's used, and you're not going to agree that those facts are believable. So I mean, I think can we just agree that there? I mean, I can even go as far as I went and said if she confesses tomorrow, and you're still not going to believe it. So, I mean, it seems like an irreconcilable.
You don't think that's a bit of a misrepresentation? I mean, you're providing a hypothesis. This is like some Sam Harris nonsense of like, if everything was different, wouldn't things be different? It's like, yeah, if things were different, things would be different. If she came out and confessed, we'd be in a very different world than whatever this ambiguous pile of trust me bros and person of interest 1, person of interest 2. Oh, didn't the Secret Service act funny? Like
you can characterize it as I mean, all you want, but I mean that's your characterization. To me, it's a lot of circumstantial at worst, and it lines itself with reasonable suspicion to probable cause, especially when you're gonna we're wrapped around the axle on the 6% with the discrepancy in the gait analysis. How about the trillions to 1 odds that you have a surveillance going on of the next door neighbor? I mean, that to me is well in excess of the 6% discrepancy.
It's one of these things where these stats I don't know what to make of. I mean, I'm aware. I mean, once again, I also think I'm kind of leaning towards it was probably Shawnee, as I've said numerous times. It's just kind of what do we make of this? And we're jumping from one thing to another, and I mean, they literally did just file a lawsuit the other day. So, I mean, this is where we're at. Now, I'm someone who's not really a fan of these sort of laws particularly, but this is the situation which we're in. So, I mean, I got to agree with Ken with this. I just feel like the journalistic, like the whatever level, I mean, I guess I don't know what specific claim was made at what point, but like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of exasperated here. We kind of are at the end of the line a little bit. I mean,
well, let me ask. I mean,
we're kind of circling around the specific. Yeah,
because everybody's been drilling me with questions. Let me ask Ken a question. Ken, you talked about how the photo of the dog and the description of the dog in the lawsuit is now kind of there, and they're saying that we have this timestamp video. Are you aware that description in the lawsuit is now the 3rd iteration of that story? And how dramatically that story is changed?
What CBS reported compared to the New York Times compared to the lawsuit. Yeah, sure. I mean, reporters get things wrong, as you very well know.
Okay, well, let's go back. Let's go back to what they got wrong. You have 3 FBI sources, unnamed, anonymous, trust me, bro sources that the CBS quotes. Now you're criticizing me for using trust me, bro, but CBS, the venerable CBS, certainly, doing it the way journalism is supposed to be done. They reported with no evidence whatsoever, no video, no proof. They reported that 3 FBI trust me bros gave them corroborating information about a timestamp video of Miss Kirchhoff on the evening of the 5th while the bomber was placing bombs in the Capitol, is that she was home in Virginia, quote unquote, playing with her puppies. Now, Ken, what they didn't know at the time is that my team doing dark web, deep web searches had found evidence that she had a single adult dog that she had only adopted a month before January 6th. And we also found a 5-star review that she gave the dog sitter. And then somebody else on our team actually interviewed the dog sitter and confirmed that she only had 1 dog. So 3 FBI agents said playing with her puppies. At least one of those FBI agents might have said, no, she wasn't playing with her puppies. She was, well, the next iteration was she was caring for her dog. The 3rd iteration was, okay, well, we don't really have her on camera, but we have her voice off camera. Well, why did they change to the second iteration? Is because I leaked those photos through Kyle Seraphin, as a matter of fact. I leaked the photo that she does not have puppies, that she has a singular adult dog, and the law firm scrambled and in their demand letter changed the story from playing with her puppies, corroborated by 3 anonymous Trust Me Bro FBI agents, to caring for her dog. Then the third iteration was, okay, so she's not really caring for her dog. She's in the kitchen off camera, but we can hear her voice.
Well,
it's bullshit.
Tell that to the judge. I don't know, man.
I have no problem. I have no problem telling it to the judge.
I mean, no, I guess I don't. Once again, I don't think me and Ken would even dispute that seems fishy. I mean, I don't really understand what the point was, to be honest. I mean, maybe I missed the point. I don't know.
But here's the point. You guys are criticizing me and saying the only thing I've got is this mysterious, gate recognition. The only alibi they're providing for us is a puppy story that has changed 3 times.
Baker, this is the crux of the problem. You're a journalist. That's a false binary. Like, this is basic stuff. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick, but like like you bringing up that, like, oh, isn't it fishy that, like, look at this crazy alibi? Yeah, it sounds like bullshit. What relevance is that? Like, I also think that your story.
You're going to bring the CBS team that came up with that story in here?
Oh, I have plenty to say CBS. I am by no means a fan of Barry Weiss.
Yeah, but you're criticizing my journalism when that is the standard. They had 3 sources. I have multiple sources as well on the gate recognition.
I do not hold Barry Weiss's journalistic standards to be the standards, but even Baker, that's beside the point. I mean, like, yes, I would agree. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Is it fair for Baker to report the change in alibi?
No, that's completely fair. Maybe is that the point that I missed, or maybe I missed that. That was the point, to report the changing the alibi. That seems fair. Yeah, it is fishy they changed their alibi, but I thought you were trying to imply that meant something, as if that, like, somehow strengthened your case, which I wouldn't say. I've seen plenty of people in the chat going on about, like, oh, this guy's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. It strengthens my case because we have a changed alibi from the biggest, scariest law firm, defamation plaintiff law firm in the world, and they only changed it because we went, aha, we got a photo here. It's not what you said it was. So you've already leaked this false information to CBS. We can prove that it was false information. Okay. So she wasn't playing with her puppies. She was caring for her dog, and then et cetera, down the line. But we also have that from the same person who then also the polygraph went, But you're wrong there too.
I guess my point, that's not going to help you because they can just say CBS got it wrong. So that helps you 0 in your litigation.
No, they have to say this. They have to say the FBI got it wrong, right? 3 FBI sources corroborated that they saw video of her playing with her puppies. 3 professionally trained agents. Got it wrong. The reporter got it wrong? Okay. The reporter lied?
Yeah, that'd be a problem. I mean, if they were being sued or something, and then I guess that would be the case. But yeah, I also, like, that does seem. I'm not a big fan of using Trust Me Bros. Honestly, I tend to not like it. But yeah, obviously, it's you evaluate it with that being what it is, and I know kind of. Let's be real. I read about I don't know if I read CBS's specific story, but most of that stuff, especially establishment media, I read that with a gigantic grain of salt. So, but I kind of do that across the board. So, yeah, I mean, and this is kind of, you've brought up a few times the law firm that Shawnee's gotten, which, don't get me wrong, I'm a schizophrenic conspiracy guy. Like, I connect all the dots, but I mean, as you're going on about this, like, I've followed I mean, not that I follow you closely, but I've followed you enough to remember when you were going on about with your court case a long while back, the J6 stuff, where you seemed tickled pink that Dershowitz might take up your case, one of the most high-powerful lawyers. My point being is that, like, you seem to have this apply a bad motive. You're like, you have, the biggest law firm, this, that, and, like, I don't know, maybe, but there's also, on the flip side, like, you could be looked at with the same scrutiny. I've literally heard you essentially admit to doing foreign intelligence behind the Iron Curtain. Like, I mean,
no, I've
hell,
never
even
said
friend.
That. I have never said that. I have never said that. You are misquoting what I said. Completely.
Okay, I mean, it was a pretty long quote, to be fair, so I didn't watch the whole podcast.
You're completely mischaracterizing what I said about that.
You said it was undercover covert operations being funded.
I said a Christian organization that I was working for. A Christian organization that I was working for received funding from the likes of, back then, Coors Beer. They received funding from dark money from the Department of the Interior, James Watts under the Reagan administration, that there was funding that they received. And in that process, I worked behind the Iron Curtain, taking and supporting Christian dissidents operation. We smuggled in printing press plates. We smuggled in recording equipment, tape duplication equipment, all, technology standards of the day that they didn't have, that the Christian underground did not have, dissidents didn't have them, to support them in their efforts to undermine the Soviet, government. That's exactly what we were doing. And I was a kid, I was 21, 23 years old doing this kind of stuff. And that's the entire characterization of exactly what I said. Nothing more, nothing less.
I don't disagree with that. That's exactly what I meant.
You said, so we're all in agreement, but you did say black budget and like undercover. Maybe
I said black. I said black money. I said black money from. I was not what I said. I said black money from the Department of the Interior, and then we joked about all the black money that the different agencies have so that they can fund various operations of the covert intelligence and DOD and special forces operations around the world. We joked about that, but I said specifically as far as what I did and what we were doing at the time is that was a couple of the resources by which we were funded.
Okay.
So Baker, this doesn't have anything to do with Baker talking about the pipe bomb.
No, I'm just more bringing up the point of like filling in the blanks. Like we can all play this game. We can go, look at these high-powered lawyers.
Deep state law firm, Claire Locke. And by the way, this is another point where you're just totally saying that it's being funded by the taxpayers without any actual evidence. It could be them being politically motivated, could be some sort of benevolent Democrat donor supporting this lawsuit, kind of like how Peter Thiel funded Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker. Mm-hmm. But you automatically just like lay out a narrative, this is costing the taxpayers money, and people just eat it up, and you don't have any evidence, man.
Is he reporting that?
I also said that it was, I enjoy shit posting about stuff like that earlier. And here's the thing that I will also add to that is it's the same law firm that has recently represented John Ratcliffe, director of CIA, in a case as well. But anyway, I'm sure there's no connection there. And that's me shit commenting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying we can all play this game. It just seems you can interpret it, through negative ways. People can connect dots, but I mean, you kind of jump to a little bit conclusions somewhat. But I don't know. I mean, I think we're once again spinning around. Is there anything else between everyone here that anyone wants to hone in on? I mean, it's Baker. If you want to, keep asking questions. I don't want to leave anything on the table here. Get it all out. But we are getting a little long with it too. So I'm sure. I'll conclude with what I have to say by just saying this, and I've said it before, is that when I entered this process, knowing who I was going up against, and if you guys have any belief whatsoever, that this was a Fedsurrection, all right, of any type, any kind, and if you believe in the possibility that there was a conspiracy of any type, any kind, I believe that there was. I believe that there was a conspiracy between the Capitol Police, who were the foot soldiers that day, in a couple of very specific incidences, one of them being the pipe bomb. We have more that we're going to be showing about the pipe bomb as well, related to the Capitol Police, as well as other issues related to the Capitol Police's involvement that day. And when I say Capitol Police, I'm not talking about the frontline soldiers, the frontline officers, rather. I'm not talking about the, first responders in that group. I'm talking about what they themselves refer to as the white shirts. I'm talking about the very people who the frontline Capitol Police
believe set them up that day. And by the way, that's not just the more right-wing, guys that like to play guns that become cops that believe that they were set up that day by their superiors, but also the left-wing cops, including Harry Dunn, biggest lefty of them all out there, in his own book said that he believed that they were set up that day to fail. And so the point being is that I believe that there was a multi-agency conspiracy as it relates to the pipe bomb, both in its planning and ultimately with at least the additional addition of the FBI in the cover-up of that. I'm sorry. And that's where I begin. But I've always said, because I believe these things and because I know who I'm up against, I don't ever expect to win this. I don't believe that Kash Patel and John Ratcliffe are ever going to walk to the microphone one day in front of the cameras and go, oh, gosh darn it, those rascally rats from the Blaze, Joe Hanneman and Steve Baker, they got it right. We were wrong all along. I don't believe that's ever going to happen. I don't believe that we can win this in front of a D.C. court or even a Northern Virginia court in that district where the lawsuit is being filed. I don't believe we can win this. But I am going to win this in the court of public opinion, and I am going to win it for the sake of history. And I've always said that. If we win it in court, or if Ratcliffe and Patel confess, or Shani Kirkhoff goes to a microphone herself, she flips and says, okay, I've got to get this off my conscience, then, so be it. My first goal right now is to get Brian Cole Jr. out of jail. My second goal is to get Brian Cole Jr. acquitted or the case dropped. The defense team shocked the prosecution last week in their status hearing because the prosecution in the Brian Cole case, DOJ added two more serious charges to him, to which Brian Cole, the guy who allegedly confessed to the crime, he pled not guilty to these additional charges. And then the defense team said, we want a trial date now. And the prosecution was like, what the fuck? Because they thought that they were going to scare the parents, the defense team, Brian Cole, the autistic, highly OCD kid, into a guilty plea and a plea deal by putting these two additional charges on him, which is, of course, is standard operating procedure of the Department of Justice. And they didn't get that. So they were shocked that the defense is demanding a trial date. Why is the defense demanding a trial date? Because they know shit. They know stuff that's going to be revealed that they've seen in discovery. And additionally, as soon as that case is either dropped or he's acquitted, then all eyes are going to turn back to the only other person that the entire world is talking about as a possible suspect. And that's where I'm going to win this, as I said, at the very least in the court of public opinion. And I don't care about the old rules of when it comes to journalism in this regard. Yeah, I'm laying out all the circumstantial evidence as well. The circumstantial evidence is legion right now. We haven't even begun to cover all of that, but we're going to. I had to get unmuted. Remember, I've been silent. I was silenced for 5 months by the Blaze. I left the Blaze and I put myself in a position forcing them to terminate me because I could not be silent anymore about this case. So there's my closing statement.
I guess, that's a lot. Ken, if you go ahead, you can respond.
I was just gonna say that's certainly a lot of bombast. I'll be impressed if it's true. I just note that you also postured like you were going to fight your January 6th charges to the very end, only to cut a plea deal the week before your trial. Even after Trump had won.
Never cut a plea deal. So you don't even have that story correct. You don't even know that. No, never cut a plea deal. You don't even have that story correct. You are just as guilty, Ken, of reading what the mainstream media said about me, what the FBI, what the DOJ said about me, which was a bunch of bullshit to begin with. And you're just as guilty of regurgitating their lines and as anybody else, but you don't have that story correct. So, I mean, you can go ahead and present your version, and then I'll tell you exactly what happened, which is corroborated by actual press.
So what's the version?
The version is that my trial date was set on November 12th of 2024. When was the election? The election was a week before that. My trial date was exactly 1 week after Trump won the election. Because we have very highly placed sources inside the White House, the Blaze did at the time, we had received advanced information on my case that 100% I was going to get a pardon. All right? That's the first thing. So, my trial date, I instructed my attorneys that I was not going to go to trial, that I was not going to face the shaming process that hundreds of other people have been put through in those trials, that in fact I was going to plead guilty to all 4 of my nonviolent misdemeanor defenses. Not a plea deal. That's not a plea deal, guys.
Okay,
no.
man. You got
I was going to plead guilty. No, I was going to plead. Listen to the story, though, Ken. I was going to plead guilty to all 4 charges because I knew I was going to get pardoned. So here's what the judge did. You know what the judge did? So in the courtroom, it's in the transcript. I have the transcript. I'll send it to you. So what the judge did is after I pled guilty to the 4 charges, he looked at the clerk and he said, okay, when will Mr. Baker's sentencing hearing be? And she types in and she goes, it'll be March the 6th, because under federal law, it has to be at least 60 days after a guilty plea or a guilty verdict before the federal defendant faces the sentencing. Right. Now, also under federal law, which you may or may not know, is that under federal law, you're not either convicted or guilty until sentencing. It's an interesting little twist in federal law. So until federal law, you're not guilty.
This is like sophistry, man. This is
no, it is the law. Look it up. And so what happened, because I knew that the pardons were coming down, I took that because I knew that when the pardons were issued on January 20th, I didn't get a pardon, by the way. I got a case dismissal with prejudice. In other words, what happened to me for 3 years never happened to me. It's gone. Didn't exist. I didn't get a pardon. My case was dismissed with prejudice because I knew what the law was, and I played the law because Trump won. I knew I knew that he was going to issue pardons, commutations, and case dismissals, and I knew that I was not guilty and I was not convicted until sentencing under federal law. So I rolled the dice because Trump could have, he's done it before. He could have fooled us. He could have failed to do that, but he did it. He honored his promise, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay, man. That's
I rolled the dice and I won.
Yeah, you had excellent timing that Trump was inaugurated before you're actually sentenced. But November 12th, the actual court docket, defendant sworn and enters a plea of guilty as to count 1 through 4 of the information. November 12th, transcript of plea agreement hearing. Mm-hmm. So, like, the larger point is, like, why not just take it to trial? And, like, you're getting
because I wasn't going to put myself through, as I said, the shaming process of what they did. I don't know how many January 6 trials you covered, Ken. I covered several of them, and it is a horrible experience what they put these defendants through. They lie. They twist the facts. They twist the facts in the charging documents all the way up through the trial, all the way up through the sentencing hearings. And here's what Judge Cooper said to me on that date where I pled guilty. So he looks at the clerk, says, when's his sentencing date? She says March the 6th. And he says, okay, Mr. Baker, he said, since I'm probably not going to see you in March. What did he mean by that? All of the judges knew that the pardons were coming. He said, since I'm probably not going to see you in March, he said, I'm going to hazard, that's the exact word he used, I'm going to hazard to give you the remarks that I would normally give you at a sentencing hearing. So he delivered his chastisement of me. And you know what and this is all in the transcript. He didn't even criticize my behavior on the 6th because the video evidence is that I didn't misbehave. The FBI charging documents claim that I did, but we have 100% of every minute that I was in the Capitol on video. I didn't misbehave. I'm sitting there taking fucking notes.
Absolutely. I do not think you should have faced those charges in the first place. My whole point is that you talked a big game all through 2024, only to not go to trial. Now you're talking a big game again. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, but you mischaracterized what the big game worked out. I talked the big game, but it changed because the situation changed when Trump won, and one of his primary campaign promises were those pardons. And so anyway, so I'll finish what I was saying is that the judge said to me, he did not criticize my behavior that day. You know what he criticized? He criticized two things. He criticized me for referring to the weaponization of the Department of Justice and for the bias of this court. He criticized my post-January 6th journalism in what would have been my sentencing hearing remarks. He didn't criticize my behavior that day at all.
That's fine, but my point is after Trump wins, the stakes are a lot lower. You're essentially playing with house money. You talk about a humiliation process. You could have gone hard back at the prosecution, take the stand, make speeches. Like it could have been a great opportunity.
No, you don't know.
Okay.
You don't know, Ken. The week before when we did our final status hearing before the trial, the judge refused my attorney's desire to present a selective prosecution defense, which would have brought in, we would have subpoenaed dozens of other mainstream left-leaning journalists who were never charged, but did the exact same thing that I did. They followed the crowd in, they followed the story where the story went, and they were never prosecuted. And we're going to present a selective prosecution defense, and the judge denied our ability to do that, denied that motion. We fought that 2 or 3 times, and in the final week, or the week before, exact week before, he said, no, not allowing that. So it's like, okay, so we have no defense. I'm not going to be allowed to defend myself. We're going to be a typical situation. It's going to be another January 6th trial where the prosecutors are allowed to present anything they want, and the defense is only allowed to present maybe some testimony from character witnesses. It's a bullshit process.
To take the stand.
I'd be allowed to take the stand, but I can't present. But they muzzle you, and I can't even talk. I would not even be allowed to say on the stand that 80 other journalists pass through those doors from the outside to the inside. Why weren't they prosecuted?
You totally could have said that, even if the judge orders the jury to strike that from the record.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a DC jury, dude. You don't win in front of a DC jury. Those DC juries were so predetermined to convict every one of those. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we know the story. If you follow those trials at all, you know what happened.
To back up Ken's point, the larger points, I guess we can get into the finer points here, but it does kind of look like you did talk a lot about how you're going to go to trial, takes on the trial. You ended up not doing so. We have another trial coming up, and you are also kind of signaling you think you could lose, possibly. I don't know. I guess I was a little confused. And so, I mean, it looks like we could end up with some sort of, Alex Jones Redux type thing where, we end up with some sort of weird situation where now we're questioning the J6 pipe bombing is verboten to some degree. I don't know. I guess I'm not as hopeful that we're going to win in the eyes of public opinion. But I mean, I don't know. I guess from just looking at the bigger points, it kind of, we're kind of holding this up on a court case. I mean, I guess you said you wanted to use everything you had all at once, but I don't know. Probably would have been better to keep some things close and you had some things more solid. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, Ken, do you have any?
Just Brian Cole sitting in jail right now because he just had to publish the trigger, even though he just admitted that he thinks he's going to lose through this whole process. And there's a good chance that, as you say, an innocent man is going to be in prison, supermax, for the next 30 years. And, that's not totally on you. That's obviously, the deep state. But if you...
It's not my case at all.
Yeah, but you said...
I mean, you keep referring to it to bolster yours, so...
No, I said once his charges are either dismissed or he's acquitted, I don't believe that he can be convicted. This is a difference between what I'm saying about my case and his case. I don't believe a DC jury will convict him. I don't think the DC jury, I don't think the prosecution has a chance in hell of him being convicted for a couple of reasons. Well, number one, it's a DC jury. Do you know, let me ask you a little trivia question here. Do you know who the only two oath keepers were that were acquitted in January 6 trials? Anybody?
No, not off the top of my head. I think I've heard it, but
one of them's name is James Beeks. The other guy's name is Michael Green. You know what the distinguishing characteristic of both of the oath keepers who were not convicted and fully acquitted are?
But they're minorities?
They're both black. Charged with the same crimes. DC jury is not justice. There's no way they're going to convict an autistic black kid.
Wait, you're implying because he's black they won't convict him here? Is that really the... I mean, don't get me wrong, I think woke's gone out of control, but like...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the DC jails are loaded with black people.
I just asked... yeah, and they are. I mean, when we saw those trials, 80% were minorities in the jury box.
What happened to the Proud Boys leader? What's his face? The
Enrique
FBI.
Tarrios?
Yeah, Enrique Tarrio. He was convicted.
Yeah.
He wasn't even there, so...
He wasn't even there. But he's, he can pass as a white guy, but he was also pegged as a fully, insurrectionist leader, planner, tip of the spear, organized the whole thing, meeting with the president. I mean, you just have to follow what they said about him.
Yeah, the actual left-wing Antifa guy went to jail too. The guy that was, I think didn't he film Ashley Babbitt getting shot?
Yeah, John Sullivan. I covered his trial.
Another black guy convicted. So
yeah, I covered his trial.
Yeah, and by the way, I will say something nice about you. You did do a good job on the Oath Keepers trial for sure. We're at 2 hours. I mean, I guess my closing thing is Baker's saying a lot of wait and see. Okay. So so far, everything that I said on that November 10th video has transpired. My track record is a lot better. If things turn around, Brian Cole's acquitted, we get more attention on Shawnee, and it actually turns out that, it was her, I will be the first to applaud you. I mean, Steve Friend said, even if she admits it, you won't accept it. No, that's not true. What I said is, if we don't get the puppies video, either in your litigation or Cole's, then I'll be a lot more apt to side with you. So Friend kind of misrepresented what I actually responded to him, about an hour ago. And it's just a shame that you had to go about doing it this way. I mean, there were ways of getting your story out where it wouldn't have had these disastrous legal and professional consequences for you and Joe Hanneman. I mean, you could have give your findings to Thomas Massey, have him write up a letter to Dan Bongino. That letter gets leaked to you. Now you're just reporting on the letter, and that there's a far less chance for litigation. So I just wish you would have thought this out better, because I don't know if, I'm with Jose, I don't think the public opinion's going to side with you. I mean, there's still powerful propaganda forces at play. And I think just about 90% of the public will say that your whole thing was debunked, as that's where we stand now.
Do you think that it's 90% now?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're seriously misreading this. I
think you're in your
seriously misreading
your
that.
Followers agree with you.
No, if we're talking about the right wing of the, Twitterverse or the social media world, most of the right wing people are falling in line with our narrative, and more are coming on board, especially when you have the leaks like that happened from the defense team about the polygraph. Those things continue to bolster our case, and there's more such things coming from the discoveries that is out there. And I wish I could just blow it all out, at one time, but we are actually, they call it activist journalism. That's fine. I don't mind having myself characterized as an activist journalist. I am working towards getting Brian Cole acquitted. Job number one. And because I believe he's an innocent man, I believe he's a patsy, I believe he's being framed. And the same exact intelligence community that is doing that to him is also protecting somebody else. There's only one reason to frame him, is because they got something to hide.
I wish you well.
Any okay, I guess any final thoughts? We are going a little late. I'm sure it's friends like, what the hell did I sign on for? I want to go back to my wife. I don't blame you. My wife's not home right now though, so whatever. I could stay for another hour, but any final thoughts? We keep digging in and keep finding more to attack. I did see somebody in the chat that wanted us to address some of the assassination attempt reporting, because that's actually what started this. I think that would probably unfold probably another at least a half hour. So unless we're going to release Steve, unless we want to release Friend from this hell, and then it just me, you, and Baker or something. But I think that would be unfair to do to everybody here. Exactly. But any final thoughts? I'll give you, Ken. I guess if you want to take an audible here and say, fuck it, we're going into it anyways, you can. But any final thoughts, Ken? I'll give you the final, and then we'll do plugs and get out of here. Do all the stuff.
Yeah, it's obvious. You could read the transcript of the sniper right behind Trump. He's the one that shot Crooks 15 seconds too late. Just because Trump said it came from 448 yards doesn't make it so. Trump also thinks Iran's trying to kill him. I know Friend knows all about the dubiousness of that whole stuff. Maybe an hour and a half ago, we had this whole issue of how Kyle Seraphin represented his role in the investigation. I still contend that he said initially that he was surveilling the actual suspect planting the devices. That was transplanted in the original Blaze article. You guys had to run a correction. I'm almost 94% sure that that's the case. If it's not, I will publicly admit it on Twitter tomorrow, but I'm going to go check that after we get off. And yeah, I'm done.
All right. Well, I guess Baker, if you want to give your plugs, let people know where to find you, all this stuff. Any final thoughts? Sorry to do this to you on your birthday, but hey, we had to do it. So I'm glad we got to do it. I guess the audience can make of this what they will. But any final thoughts? If you want to let people know where they can find you at, and where you're right. I don't know if you're writing somewhere else these days. Any information like that, now's the time.
Yeah, Joe and I started a brand new publication, incorporated, did the whole thing. We actually knew that this day was going to come with the Blaze, where we were going to no longer be able to hold our tongues, and that would result in our termination. So we started working on putting something together, and we did launch our own publication, Veritas Regdot, and then. You can find that at the top of rather than me spelling it and going through that, just go to @SteveBakerUSA on X, and you can find the links to our new site there. And so that's how to find where we are, what we're doing now. And interestingly enough, the 3-week-old company that it is, the Claire Locke is also named our 3-week-old company in their lawsuit. So, I mean, they're going to get a lot of return on their investment there.
All right, friend. Let people know if you have any final thoughts. Whatever you want to do. If you just want to let people know where they can find your show at, I know you have your own show. You can tell them about. But floor's yours.
Yeah. Just
Lisa can do for sitting here for so long.
You can find my podcast, the American Radicals Podcast, AmRad Pod at AmRad Pod on Rumble, YouTube, and Spotify.
Awesome. Appreciate all of you guys for joining me. For those who want to support the show, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can find the show on YouTube, Rumble, all the major audio podcatchers, and Twitter as well. On Twitter, that's at TarragangJose. Everywhere else, just look for the No Way Jose podcast. A low level of $2 on patreon.com/NoWayJose2020 if you want to support the show the best way you can. Top left-hand corner is the QR code. Like $2, you get a whole host of perks. I give you guys early episodes, give you access to Telegram, the pre-show, post-show, and video calls on Already Dead, our live call-in show on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I also give a big shout out to my sponsors. It's the highest level of my Patreon. It's a big thank you for their support. My previous hosts on Tower Gang, at Leonard Toad, also at Brigade D's, at ZOVRCK, at _Invincible, Tim Tuttle, at John Klebo, a big fan of the show, Torn May, at Wayne Takas, 100 Car for Kids, No Free Lunch, Jack, Mark Vestibule, and Jacob Winterguide of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast. And with that, we are out of here. Thank you all for joining us. Do all the things. We'll see you on the next one. I should be in for a morning dump tomorrow, probably around 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.